Hello, welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast, the channel for film reviews, discussions and everything in between. We're back. Apologies for the 2 weeks delay. If you follow us on Facebook or Twitter, you know that a lot's been going on with the channel recently. For those of you who don't know, George Aldridge, my co-host, unfortunately decided to leave the channel. His college has just started up again and he has other commitments like work, etc. And it just wasn't possible for him to continue with the videos for the channel. So unfortunately, he's no longer with us on the channel, but he has said that he would like to come back every now and then when he can to do any little reviews, or we've been talking about a new video series with him as well, where he will be talking to camera for about 3 minutes or so per video each week. So he will still be involved with the channel. He'll definitely be a part of like the Spectre, the James Bond review coming out this month, and definitely the Star Wars ones throughout the month of December, because we want to keep him around on the channel, and you might see him still posting on the Facebook and Twitter groups as well. But now, as we move into phase 2, we'll be introducing our new co-host for moving forward. New co-host Tayten Nyahwa. Tate, welcome to the channel, man. I know you're a big movie fan too, so why not tell the audience a bit about yourself?
Hi there, everyone. Tayten, Mr. Tayten, all the channels and stuff like that. I love films. That's basically all you need to know about me. I love all kinds of films. I love critiquing them. I love looking at the different stats from films, movie news. Basically, just perfect for this channel, really.
All that good stuff, and I was telling you about this before we hit record, but like when I was trying to find a new person before I found yourself, it's so hard finding people who are passionate about film and can talk about film. Usually I'll go and see a film with someone and I'll be like, what do you think of the film? And it'll just be like, yeah, it was good. And that's it.
Yeah. I could talk about films for hours, really. So
yeah. Have you got any favourite films in particular? Just sort of give the audience an idea of some of the stuff you're into.
I like comic book movies. Favourites probably going to be Watchmen. I also love Scott Pilgrim, stuff like that. I love old-timey movies. I absolutely love The Maltese Falcon and films from that era. And my favourite film of all time is Gattaca, which is a sci-fi kind of realistic genetic engineering film. So
yeah, and like on the channel before, we haven't really talked about sort of films like that, so hopefully with that we can bring a new dynamic. And I almost see the channel now, we're moving into its second phase, so it's exciting times for the channel, and that will sort of bring us on to updates with what's going on. We've decided to bring out a new schedule for the channel, so you can now find our main reviews on Mondays, and we're going to break up the segments. Usually for the main show it would be about an hour and a half to hour 45 minutes, where we'd run down the week in movie news, then into our review, then film fights, and then recommended movie. But we're going to break it up and shake it up a little bit. So our main review now is just going to be talking about the film, ending with the recommended movie. Thursdays, as usual, will still be our smaller midweek show Film Club, which we still wanted to keep going because I think that's good, and especially with what you just said, like in older films, I think that it's also good to look back and talk about past films as well as the recent releases. And movie news will now be moving to its own video, which we'll try and get to you on Sundays. It just makes more sense. I mean, for a movie review, no one really wants to sit through a half hour of movie news before they listen to a review. So, and being on Sundays as well, it's the end of the week. We can round up everything that's come out and just go into detail on all the points. So I think that's probably the best. So just to summarise, main review Mondays, Film Club Thursdays, and movie news on Sundays. So that's basically what's going on the channel. And now we're going to jump straight into our review for today's show, which is...
Yes, we are.
Yes, The Martian, recent film by Ridley Scott.
I guarantee you that at some point, everything's gonna go south on you.
Ready?
And you're gonna say, this is it.
Ready!
This is how I end.
Commander, Mark is dead. We have to go now.
Now you can either accept that, or you can get to work.
This will come as quite a shock to my crewmates. And to NASA. And to the entire world. but I'm still alive. Surprise. Here's the rub. It's gonna be 4 years for another mission to reach me. And I'm in a hab designed to last 31 days. So I gotta make water and grow food on a planet where nothing grows. But if I can't figure out a way to make contact with NASA, then none of this matters anyway.
We've got an incoming message.
Mein Gott. Mark Watney's still alive.
In your face, Neil Armstrong. Okay, so let's do the math. I have enough food to last for 50 days.
He's going to starve to death long before we can help.
So I'm gonna have to science the shit out of this.
He's 50 million miles away from home. He's totally alone. What the hell is he thinking right now?
I am the greatest botanist on this planet.
I know how to save Mark Watney.
But we need the Hermes crew.
We either have a high chance of killing one or a low chance of killing 6.
I'm not risking their lives. It's bigger than one person.
No, it's not.
I guess we can just go straight into it with sort of our impressions before we saw the film, thoughts before going in.
Yeah, sure.
Based on the trailer and everything like that. For me, I know it was based on a book, and on the trailers it said from the best-selling book. I haven't actually read the book. I knew nothing about The Martian, really, only apart from what was revealed in the trailer. It was, Matt Damon's character is stranded on Mars, and he's got to try and survive. It's basically, I've seen a lot of people say it's like Castaway. So yeah, really, that was the rough plot, and I was intrigued by the plot because I think, unlike a lot of Ridley Scott's previous movies, especially recently, it seemed like it was not a smaller film, but it felt more self-contained, more of a personal story, and I think that was probably the best way to go. I mean, if you look at his recent films, to be honest, I'm trying to think of what last film by Ridley Scott I really, truly enjoyed. It was probably Kingdom of Heaven, to be honest, thinking about it. I know he did Robin Hood, Exodus, Prometheus. None of those were just hitting for me. But without sort of giving too much away before we get into our review, I think this is definitely a return to form for Ridley Scott, and I think this is probably his best film in since I can remember.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, he hasn't had the best track record as previously. I mean, I personally hated Prometheus. Oh my god.
Oh, it was terrible.
It was such a train wreck of a film. And it is the only film where I've actually thought about walking out from it.
Yeah, and I think what the problem with that film was as well is that it promised that it was going to set up for Alien and Aliens. Yeah. And it just really just failed in every single aspect of that. I know recently, I know this isn't a news video, but they've confirmed that they want to do a Prometheus 2, 3, and 4, haven't they?
Oh, God, they haven't.
So, they withheld the plot from Prometheus and just, taunted us with all these questions and never paid anything off, and it seems like they're going to carry on doing that anyway.
Sadly, with the film, though, I feel like they taunted us with questions that we really didn't care about.
Oh, yeah. That's true as well, yeah.
But yeah, back onto The Martian. I saw the first trailer, and I thought, okay, it's a space sci-fi film. It's got Matt Damon in it. It kind of looks like Interstellar.
Yeah.
I wasn't really too sure on it. I thought, is it going to be a clone film? It doesn't look too exciting. Didn't look like there was many exciting moments from the trailer. I thought, have I seen everything from this film just in this short amount of time? So I was left a bit skeptical to start off with going into it.
Yeah, and you mentioned as well the comparison to Interstellar, and I think a lot of people have been saying that as well. Not only have you got Matt Damon, but also Jessica Chastain plays a fairly integral role in the film as well. So I was saying, if you squint hard enough, then you can pretend that you're watching a more colourful version of Interstellar. But yeah, and from the trailers as well, I remember when trailer 1 came out, and a lot of people who had read the book were sort of up in arms that it had spoiled everything, and that really you won't have any surprises when you get to the film. I didn't really have that problem from the first trailer. I had more of a problem with the second trailer, because that felt like those sort of old-timey 80s trailers where they basically just show you cliff notes from every single section of the film, to the point where you've basically seen the film before you've even got in there. But honestly, no, when you sit down, you watch the film, there are still a lot of surprises in it. There's a lot that the trailers don't show. But I mean, at its core, you can kind of predict where the film's going to go. This isn't a bad thing about the movie. I think it completely works for the story they're telling, but it is a very sort of paint by the numbers film, in that it's that typical sort of disaster movie or where a character's stranded and having to survive by themselves. The film itself doesn't really try anything new. But then again, when I think about it, I think if it did try to make it more complicated and convoluted, I think that would have hurt the film. So as it is, I think it's perfectly serviceable for what it is. I just don't think it's anything like game-changing in the genre it's in.
Yeah, I feel like if they did try and make it more confusing and kind of more intricate and stuff like that, it would be Interstellar.
Yeah,
there would be no difference between the two films other than where it's taking place.
And I know a lot of people complained about Interstellar as well, most notably sort of like the ending and how it all panned out there. Yeah, what was it? It was like intergalactic fifth dimensional bookcase in space. Yeah, I remember enjoying it at the time, but I think back to it and there's a lot of sort of weird moments in Interstellar.
I just kind of thought, oh, look, it looks pretty cool.
yeah, and it's Nolan's name on it, so everyone has to give it a free pass, right? But yeah, I guess we can move into the cast more now. So obviously the guy on the poster and the main guy in this is Matt Damon, who plays astronaut Mark Watney. Yeah, I just had to bring up the Wikipedia page there to help me out with that. And Matt Damon's always been one of those actors. He's never a bad actor, and I don't think really from what I've seen he's ever turned in a bad performance. He's just sort of one of those actors that is just there, and I'm like, it's Matt Damon.
He can pick his films, really.
Oh, totally, yeah. And he's just never wowed me all that much. I mean, I've seen him in the Bourne films. I'm not really too keen on those films, I have to be honest. And also, Team America's just sort of kind of ruined Matt Damon's actual name for me now. But yeah, and in this, I think he's absolutely fantastic. And one of the things that I really didn't expect from this film was the level of humour in it as well, which is consistent all the way through. I know that you say that you've got some problems with that, but to me, if this could have gone two ways. It could have gone the way it did, which was comedic and kept that all the way through, or it could have gone all out bleak and depressing and really show the struggle of his survival.
Yeah.
I think the film still does have that tension where it's like a race against time to get him back, and they play this up with sort of the limited food preserves he's got and try to survive there when things are going wrong. But Mark Watney himself is a funny character, and he always has that banter with his crew members and when he's communicating back to NASA and everything like that. I don't know whether the level of humour not took you out of the film, but maybe sort of lessened the stakes of the situation he was in. So I don't know whether maybe they could have started with the humour, and then as the film went on, he becomes less and less, he becomes more demoralised, and his humour slips away from that.
No, I completely agree with you. I don't know how to categorize the film itself. I would say it was a comedy.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people may say, oh no, it isn't a comedy, it's just got comedy elements. No, it is a space comedy. It's just very dry humor, and it chooses when to be funny and when not to be funny. There aren't too many not funny moments, and even in those moments, because Matt Damon's character is enthusiastic, you think, that was a funny moment. He is just, it's just the way that the character's been brought across by Matt Damon. I'm not sure whether a different actor in that role would have given the same performance.
And again, this stems from the book as well. I've never read the book, so I don't know if Matt Damon's performance is completely on point with the character, or whether the comedic element stemmed more from Drew Goddard's screenplay. He wrote films like Cabin in the Woods, World War Z, and Cloverfield, and all of which had comedic elements to them, most notably Cabin in the Woods is what I've just said. But I think, personally, I thought the comedy worked, because I think that if this had have been a bleak film, not only would it have drew more comparisons to Interstellar itself, but I just think, because I mean, it is a fairly long movie. It's 140 minutes, 2 hours 20. I never really had any moments watching the film though where I was checking my watch though and sort of getting fidgety. I think that the pace of the film was very good. I think that it kept the balance between Matt Damon actually on Mars to the team and NASA trying to bring him back, and then as well as the crew members that were leaving, that were part of Watney's crew at the start of the film. I thought that it juggled all that very well, and the scenes and the editing moved at a very brisk pace. So I didn't really feel the effects of a long movie, but I think that if you had have took all those comedic elements out of it, then I do think the film would have definitely started to drag, especially
so long.
Yeah, especially around like the second act and stuff like that. But I mean, I guess we can talk about the supporting cast as well in this, because not only does Matt Damon turn
Yeah.
in a great performance, but you've also got loads of other actors in there too. You've got Jessica Chastain, who I think she's definitely one of the best actresses in the business currently.
Yeah.
Really, really fantastic in this. This isn't giving away too much either. She's plays the she's like the commander, really, isn't she? She's the she's the leader,
commander of the ship that Mark Watney is on.
Yeah, and right from the opening scene, and this is just, again, this is shown in the trailer, the bit where Watney's left behind on Mars, you do see her with that struggle of wanting to keep all of her team members protected and get them all back home safely, but she has to make that strong call of, well, they think he's dead. Does she jeopardise the lives of all the rest of her crew? Or do they get away to safety and leave him behind? And she picks that decision. And all the way through the film, you see her wrestling with that, and she is sort of like a natural-born leader. And even, again, up until the end, like, where she never forgets about Mark, and she always, wants to try and bring him back to safety.
Yeah. And I have to say, I think that the casting people have done an extremely good job in just kind of, well, even the director and stuff like that, making sure that all the characters act like astronauts.
Yeah.
Because I haven't seen many films where the characters have acted so cool under pressure, making quick decisions. Usually in these kind of films, it's just like an okay, we'll do that then, and it's usually the risk that the character takes. No. In real life, what astronauts do is they do the least risk, highest reward. And in this film, that's exactly the same. I mean, without even spoiling anything from the start of the film, she makes the decision, instead of staying around and stuff like that, waiting out the inevitable storm which supposedly kills Matt Damon, she decides, nope, we're getting out of here. We gotta go. We can't risk anything from this mission. We just have to bail out. And that is what an astronaut would do.
She's the level-headed one.
She is the level-headed one out of the entire crew.
Matt Damon, right from the start and all the way through the film, he's the typical like maverick hotshot, isn't he? Like, because he's the one who suggests they stay behind through the storm and to wait it out. But no, you're completely right, Jessica Chastain, and all the way through the film, she does get a little bit more unorthodox towards the end, but I think she still does retain that quality to her character, and not just that as well, but the people on the ground at NASA. Jeff Daniels, man, seeing Jeff Daniels in a movie again. I love this guy. Yeah. I haven't seen The Newsroom yet. I know that that's meant to be a fantastic series, and I think he won an Emmy for it as well. But to me, he's always just going to be Harry from Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah. Although this was a completely opposite performance from Dumb and Dumber, wasn't it?
Oh, completely, and that just shows you what a good actor he is. And even recently when he did Dumb and Dumber 2, which was a film I really didn't like, but it just shows you still, he can flip-flop between all different types of roles. And I wouldn't say that Jeff Daniels is a villain in this film. He's just sort of... I don't even think he's a bad guy, but he very much... He wants to play by the rules, and when Sean Bean's character is saying that the crew should turn back and rescue Mark Watney, he's there like, no... We've got to be safe. We've got to do it by the book and everything like that. And he is a bit of a sort of like hard ass, but I don't actually think he's like a villain or a bad guy. And he does get a few like quips here and there, which were like witty. And there's a bit I want to talk about later on for spoilers, which is my favourite scene where he gets involved in that as well.
I have to say that like his character, there was one point in the film where I did actually have to think to myself, is he the villain? Is he meant to be the villain? Because usually, no matter what film there is, there will always be a character who you dislike, or you don't want things to go their way. And there wasn't any characters in the film. There wasn't an enemy in the film. The enemy was him being stranded. And the only thing preventing him from possibly being, like, saved and stuff like that was this character. So he assumed the villain role, even though he was doing what he thought was right, and what, if you considered everything, like, the risks that were taken to get a spaceship out to save Mark Watney and stuff like that. You kind of have to empathize with him. Like, he's just doing his job. He's got to think about the bigger picture. He's got to think about budget constraints. He's got to think about time. And all these other characters who are kind of taking the hotshot stance on this on the ground are saying, oh no, we can go save him, stuff like that. And he's just saying, no, we have to wait it out. And
yeah, and he does get involved and like call other teams that are linked with NASA to try and get him back. He's not like he could have very easily been that stereotypical villain where like, no, we're not going to go up and rescue him at all.
Yeah.
It's just when other people are suggesting really strange and like far-fetched methods to get him back. Yeah, unorthodox. He doesn't want to do that. He wants to still be safe so that he doesn't risk harming anyone else. And I think it's just a conflict of ideals really with the character. He's not really a villain, although I don't think the trailer made him look like a villain, but he has that line where he's having that conversation with Sean Bean, and he says that this operation's not bigger than one person. And then Sean Bean says, no, it isn't. So again, I think it's just a conflict of ideals. You've also got other great performances, as I just said, by Sean Bean, who, as you said before we hit record, didn't die in this movie.
Yes. Is that a spoiler or?
I don't care. I just want to celebrate the fact that he didn't die in a movie for once. He's on the ground, isn't he? He's not going up into space or anything. And then as well, Chiwetel Ejiofor, who I believe was in Selma, wasn't he? This is the guy.
He was in 12 Years a Slave.
Yeah.
Did he win the Oscar for that as well? Yeah.
Yeah, he did. I'm getting mixed up with someone. My bad. Brilliant performance. Very human performance as well, which I liked about him. And then like other side characters as well. You've got Kate Mara, who can prove that she is a good actress, and just because she's in one bad space movie from a few months ago doesn't mean she's a bad actress.
Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know what film I'm mentioning, take a look through our reviews and look for Fantastic Four. You'll find my thoughts on that. And Michael Pena as well, who was in Ant-Man, who was sort of the comic relief character from that film. And he sort of has his comedic elements in this, but I think he's a lot more serious, and I completely believe that he was an astronaut and part of the team as well, and I think that goes through all the members of the crew on that team as well. There's the German guy as well, who they say at the start of the film's got some like weird kind of German latex fetish or something, doesn't he? And I think that's again the strength of the film at the start, from the opening scene, the camaraderie between all of these astronauts. From just a few lines of dialogue and quips, you completely pick up on it. I mean, a lot was riding on that actually, because if they showed no chemistry between all of the people from the opening scene, then I would have had literally no investment at all. But I think all the actors and the script as well just completely just made me buy it and made me like all the characters in it. But I know that, I don't know if you wanted to save this for spoilers or if you wanted to bring this up now, there were some characters that you didn't like.
Yeah, I would say that from the ship and crew, apart from Jessica Chastain, I didn't like any of them. The people actually on the ship, I did not like any of them. They had absolutely no depth of character. They had a lot of lines to say, but they didn't actually deliver anything with those lines. It was just kind of reinforcing the point already made by Jessica Chastain. There was no individuality between each characters. It was generic astronaut 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then the leader, Jessica Chastain. That's what I saw from the film.
I can kind of see that. Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I never had that problem myself in the film because I just found them all likable. But I think perhaps the film could have benefited. You've seen Predator, right?
Yeah.
At the start where you've got all the guys in the helicopter.
Yeah. And you
don't get loads of character from them, but you get sort of unique qualities to each of them that make them memorable throughout the rest of the film.
Yeah.
I think that maybe if we'd have seen the crew piloting to Mars and had that sort of like banter back and forth a little bit. I know we get that when they're actually on Mars, but it is a very, very quick, like 2 or 3 minute scene, and then it's straight into the plot.
I was really surprised on how fast they went to he's now stranded.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be like maybe 10, 15 minutes, and then he's stranded. But it ended up being like 2 minutes.
Yeah,
maybe even less than
that. Straight into it. Yeah,
straight into it, thrown straight into the deep end, and that gave zero time to set up any of the other characters.
And I think that. Oh, sorry, go on.
I was just about to say that the greatest character point from all of the other characters on that spaceship is that one of them has a latex fetish. Is that how deep this film really is? I know it's like, as I keep on saying, it's a comedy film. But, come on, most comedy films have a little bit more in-depth characteristics than just that.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is a thing in the book. I don't know if all the rest of the crew is sort of glossed over, or if there are other moments where the sort of like the individuality shines through in all the crew members. And again, another film that I think this can compare to, and we can move on to like sort of the visuals and effects here. To me, other than Interstellar, is probably Gravity. I do think that this film is so much better than Gravity, though, because I really didn't care for that film, to be honest. But even Gravity had that slow burn that you're talking about that I think may have benefited the film. I know usually with a film you want to jump straight into the action, you get the audience's attention right from the opening scene, and I don't dislike the film for jumping straight into that, but I do think that maybe if you'd have had a scene like just a few minutes, like 2 or 3 minutes at the start, just a slow burn, and then get to that incident, I think it may have been more of a surprise and not as predictable, because we knew where it was going to end up anyway. But I think we could have just got a little bit more on the characters, so maybe when it does get to the ending, we would have had a little bit more connection to them. But that wasn't like a drawback for me. I didn't really pick up on that myself, but now you've brought it up, I can totally see that.
I will, when we get to the spoiler section, I will speak about a moment where the characters had a chance to kind of have something that they could be labelled to. But I will talk about that later on.
Yeah.
Once we get round to that.
Yeah. So right now you could talk about the visuals and effects and stuff. I thought they were incredible, to the point where all the way through the film I was like, they had to have shot some of this on location, right? Like gone to a desert or something. I don't actually know where they would have filmed it. I know that a lot would have been done with green screen, but usually with me with effects, I'm all about practical effects and stuff, but obviously we don't have a practical Mars lying around to film there. So
don't know, the budget of the film may go a bit over if we're trying to do that.
Oh yeah. But usually with green screen, my eye can spot it straight away. I mean, recently, the films I can think of with really bad effects were probably the latest Hobbit film, Battle of the Five Armies, where everything looked fakey fake. I didn't believe the characters were there at all.
Yeah.
But with this, I had absolutely none of that. The effects were phenomenal. I thought you get long sort of landscape lingering shots of the vast plains of Mars and the chasms and the mountains.
Yeah.
And it's those moments that are just great to be a film fan and see it on a big screen. I definitely do recommend seeing it on a big screen as well, because just the scope of it in these shots, it is breathtaking to watch. And I had that when I went to see Interstellar as well, with the vast open shots of space.
You're saying that it's better to see on a big screen. Suggestion for people who are going to watch it on a big screen: do not watch it in 3D.
Yeah, and we can get onto that now as well. I saw it in 2D, and to be honest, I'm not a big fan of 3D. I will only see a 3D film if everyone's saying that that's the medium it was intended to.
Yeah, like Avatar, Gravity.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe Interstellar. Interstellar was quite magical in 3D.
Yeah, but usually if given the choice, I'll just see it in 2D. I don't really feel like I'm losing anything from seeing it in 2D, unless it's a really gimmicky film which calls for it. And to be honest, it's just always what I've stuck with through watching films. I can tell that the background is in the background. I can tell that the character's at the front of the camera. I don't need 3D to tell me that. And there were shots in this that I was picking out, mostly towards the end, of like loose screws flying around in the 0G and like water droplets and stuff like that. So I could immediately pick out where the 3D
that was all
shots
taken
would have
from
been.
Gravity, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
We'd all seen that before in Gravity, and I watched it in 3D, and I have to say it had absolutely nothing added nothing to the film.
Didn't add to the depth
nothing.
or anything like that?
Nope, nothing. And I'd say it was probably a waste of money to watch it in 3D. But
see, with 3D as well, like those moments where it doesn't look any different, I'm constantly like lifting my glasses up and looking at the screen to see if anything's different. I don't know if you do that, but
I do it sometimes. In this film, I didn't, because I could tell that there was nothing different.
Yeah.
There was only a couple. It wasn't like completely in your face 3D. There was some moments where, like with the water bubble, you're like, oh yeah, that's 3D. Other moments, they just kind of used 3D in the middle of shots, so the face would be slightly close to the camera, and you're just like, okay, they're using 3D there, but it isn't like a lot of 3D. It doesn't really add to the film or anything.
Yeah, I'm just checking here because when you were saying that nothing look like it was different. I wondered if it was a conversion, but apparently it says here that Ridley Scott chose to shoot The Martian with 3D cameras, so that's surprising because usually if it's shot in 3D, definitely looks a lot better. So I think that there were shots where it could have been like, I will always say that Gravity is the best 3D film I've seen, and I physically can't imagine watching that film in 2D.
No.
And I mean, I didn't like the film or the characters, but one thing I can say was that the visuals and the 3D experience of that film were incredible, to the point where if I saw it in 2D, I just wouldn't care for it at all. Also, going back to the locations and stuff here, apparently they got a practical backdrop for Mars in Jordan. So I think that, and I always, like, it seems like every episode of this podcast I bang on about this point, but if you can balance practical with effects, it looks so much better and so much more real, and that must be why I thought it looked real, because some of it was. And I think Ridley Scott's always good with that. I mean, we badmouth Prometheus as well, and sure, there are probably some things he could have used as practical instead of that film, but I think he always has that good mix, and he's not a sort of director that just uses CGI for the sake of it. I think it's always, if it's necessary, and will elevate the film. So I think that the visuals and effects in this film are absolutely phenomenal, but as you said, like, that's really surprised me about the 3D, because I was watching the film, and whilst I wasn't thinking I would have got more out of this film in 3D, it has surprised me, because I thought that the Mars shots would have really been elevated with that. That's a bit of a shame.
Yeah, I didn't notice the difference, to be honest, and I was trying to kind of notice the difference. But even with the long-range shots, it's far away. 3D only works with things that are up close.
Yeah.
I mean, the floating mountains in Avatar worked because you were flying by them. If you saw them in the distance, you'd think, oh look, the bottom's sticking out slightly. That's a big deal. Big whoop, like, nothing really there. And with this, there was a lot of landscape shots, which meant that it didn't get a chance to kind of show off how good the 3D was from the film. I'm sure that if they'd done a few more close-up shots on the landscape, then maybe the 3D would have worked better, but in the end they didn't.
Yeah, and I guess that's all we can say about the 2D and 3D, really. So if you were recommending this film, you'd say go and see it in 2D.
Go see it in 2D.
I was watching, like, the NASA scenes, and I was thinking, like, why would this change in 3D? It's just people talking in, like, a dimly lit room. But I guess before we sort of summarise our points, before we go into spoilers, we can talk briefly about the score as well. I didn't actually know who did the music, but I predicted, because this seems to be a typical go-to guy for Ridley Scott at this point. Harry Gregson Williams did the score. I believe that he did Kingdom of Heaven and some of his recent films as well.
Oh, he did Prometheus.
He did Prometheus as well.
Actually, no, Prometheus was okay score.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with the scores from Ridley Scott films. It's just the Ridley Scott films themselves.
Yeah, totally. And with this film, I didn't think the music was bad. I just didn't find it particularly memorable, really. It sort of just blended into the background unnoticed, which I guess you want to keep the focus on the characters and everything like that, but I'm a big fan for sort of like hummable scores, like you look at the John Williams themes, or sort of your mid-90s to 2000s Hans Zimmer and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I love those scores to death, and the music here just sort of didn't really do anything for me in terms of the actual score of the film. But the soundtrack of the film, wow, did not expect this at all. I knew it was comedic and stuff, but this is only spoiling a little bit. This isn't spoiling plot or anything like that, but Jessica Chastain's character is a big disco fan. So, like, you're looking at your late 70s, early 80s typical funk and disco. And she's obviously got it all loaded on a laptop for the long space journeys. And when she takes off and Mark's left on Mars, that's the only laptop of music he's got. And obviously, to stop yourself from going crazy, you need some form of entertainment, whether it be a film or music or whatever. So all he has to listen to is disco music. So
disco music and ABBA.
You get ABBA. You get what else do you get? Like, the credits end with "I Will Survive." It's fantastic. I love this kind of music. I've definitely got a soft spot. I'm more 80s, but I've got a soft spot in my heart for the disco as well. But I know you had a big pet peeve with the music in this film, so go for it, man.
Being a comedy film, the music was way too cheesy. It made me think, oh, yay, I'm watching Guardians of the Galaxy again, but people wanted to go watch Guardians of the Galaxy for the action and stuff. The music was just kind of a bonus to that. This one, it doesn't actually help it at all, because the film was funny enough already. It's just kind of make it cheesy funny. I mean, there's something else which isn't really spoiling it, but there was a couple of montages in the film.
There were a lot of montages.
There was a lot of montages in the film. And they fitted this music into the montages of maybe building things, maybe him organizing stuff.
Traveling and things
traveling and stuff like that. And the music wasn't needed. Maybe a good score, maybe like a really strong kind of like Star Wars-esque score going in the background whilst that going. That'd make it seem like an amazing film, because you think, wow, listen to this amazing orchestral score. But no. We've got Rock the Boat.
Oh, that's another one, yeah. I was bopping along to the cinema to all the music. I sat pretty close to the front, actually. I was like about 5 rows from the front, but the screening I saw it in was completely dead. There was like, I did see it at a really early showing though. There were 4 other people in there. There were no laughs, no chuckles, no smiles. They were like robots. And here was me bopping along to Rock the Boat at the front of the cinema. I don't even care about people behind me. I thought it was fantastic. But would you say that with the inclusion of this disco music that it sort of diluted the tension a bit in the situation he was in?
I'd say it, yeah. I say that, like, I didn't feel like he was under threat whilst the music was playing. It was a safe spot, shall we say. A safe point where it's just like, oh yeah, everything's going great, you're in like a car with your parents, everyone's bopping along to the same song and stuff like that. He's smiling, the whole world's smiling, there's nothing going wrong. He's actually back on Earth now. And it's just like, it made me feel like, it felt like a different film when the montages and the music was playing. It almost felt out of place, but little bits of comedy beforehand, little bits of comedy afterwards held the music in place. I think from the start they wanted a soundtrack like this, and I think in one point in the movie I actually thought, do you know what, they've taken the soundtrack of this movie and they thought, we'll make a film around this. We'll find a film that fits this soundtrack, and well, there you go. They found a film that kind of fits it.
I think with the music, to me, and you might disagree with me on this, but I think tonally it was almost like a disaster movie from the 90s. I mean, there are like scenes where there is tension and like the race against time, his food supplies are running low. So there's the tension from that, but I think what would have been interesting to see from the character of Matt Damon is to see not just the physical deterioration, but also the mental deterioration. I mean, I can't remember exactly how many days they say he's on Mars. I think it's like 400 or 500 days or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you, especially with being alone, listening to nothing but disco music, and just eating potatoes all day long, it's gonna like mess up your mind. But I never got that sense with his character, even up until the ending. And that was also an impressive shot as well, like later on in the film where you see his body, like at the start he's really muscular and well built, and then towards the end of the film he's really thin, he's got all sores over his body. I don't know if Matt Damon lost all the weight himself, or if they did some kind of digital technology like they did in the first Captain America film where they superimposed his head onto another guy's body. But in terms of like his mental state, I never got a sense of the urgency because of that.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to have to disagree with you there. I think that the film needed that comedy element. This is the only time that I will agree that this comedy element, because they've got films out there which are stranded in space films. We got Silent Running, where he starts speaking to the robots and stuff like that. We've got Love, where he actually goes insane. And that is a film where you really do see a physical deterioration, and the end of the film in that one feels like a drug trip because of his mental deterioration. And I think that the comedy element, kind of keeping it lighthearted and stuff like that, I feel like that was just his character's way of staying sane. I think he knew that he was possibly going to go insane, and the only way that he could keep himself sane was by doing things to make him laugh and stuff like that, keeping his mind off the fact that he was alone.
Yeah, and there are human elements with him as well that like occur like in the second act of the film towards the third act, where he does show his vulnerability and he's not as comedic. I'm not saying I have a problem with the comedy at all. I thought the comedy was completely on point. I laughed every time. To me, there wasn't a dud joke in there. This could have been a very different film if they'd had a lesser writer doing the comedy for it. and that would have completely just immediately taken me out of the movie. But I think that the comedy was still in keeping with the film, and I really enjoyed the tone of it. I guess I'm sort of summarising my points here before we move into spoilers now, but I would definitely recommend seeing The Martian. I think it's difficult to rank them, but I would definitely have it in my top 5 for films this year. Really enjoyed it. Yeah. A welcome return for Ridley Scott, I think. Let's just hope that his next few films match up to this. Brilliant performances all round from Matt Damon, Jessica Chastain, Jeff Daniels, and everyone else we mentioned.
Yeah.
Just a really enjoyable film. I do think that you should see it on a big screen as well. Obviously, as you said, not in 3D. I don't think you're going to lose anything. See it in 2D, but see it on a big screen. I can imagine this film being absolutely incredible on an IMAX, though. So if you can get there for that, see it in that. Yeah,
see,
really
I
enjoyable
have
film.
a brief summary written down here. Literally.
Yeah, go for it.
Just one sentence. I would love to hear what you'd say about this. Interstellar, the comedy.
Yes. The much. Now this is a point here. Very similar films, but also different in style. Which would you say you preferred, The Martian or Interstellar? That can be our unofficial film fights for this week.
I think that will have to be, because I'll have to put up the pros and cons for that.
Yeah.
I would, thinking out loud, I would go Interstellar, but that may be the influence of Christopher Nolan saying we'll give him a pass on this one.
Yeah, yeah. And I always get this with films as well. If I go and see a new film, I'm still very much caught up from the hype of that film, fresh out of it. I think I'll definitely need to give The Martian a few more viewings as well. I've seen Interstellar a good few times since that's been out, so I think I'll need to see The Martian again to see if it still holds up. But very enjoyable watch, and one I would definitely recommend seeing before everyone decides to go and see Spectre at the end of the month, and this eventually drops off from the cinema. But I think it's doing well at the box office so far. I think it's
seems to be
not
doing
too bad.
Well, yeah.
It's just under 100 mil at the box office, so it's not far from meeting its budget, and I hope it could get to... It's difficult to say. I don't think it's going to be one of the biggest hitters of the year, which is a shame, but I do think that it deserves to do well, because I do think it is a fantastically directed and crafted movie that everyone should see. Whether you're into comedy, whether you're into sci-fi, action, suspense, I think it's got elements of all of those, so I think it just makes for an all-round enjoyable watch, really.
Unless you're a rom-com fan, in which case I wouldn't watch this film.
There's some romantic elements a little bit towards the end before the credits.
Really?
you got to wait a long time for it.
Yeah.
But now we'll move into our spoiler section. There's really not a lot to talk about, I don't think, with spoilers. As I said, the film itself and plot is very paint by the numbers, doesn't throw any surprises out there, but we can talk about some of our favourite scenes, least favourite scenes more in detail here. So we'll jump in with favourite scenes. I want to talk about one, and I've already told you about it, but I absolutely love it. It's when Donald Glover's character, who's sort of this maths genius, I think, isn't it, or astrophysicist, he comes up with some code, and he demands a meeting with Jeff Daniels' character and takes it to a boardroom and says how they can use the gravitational pull to slingshot the ship back towards Mars to get to him quicker. And he calls the operation with a code name called Elrond. And which character doesn't know what it's from? Is it Chiwetel Ejiofor character doesn't know what... No, it's the girl, isn't it? The girl doesn't know what Elrond is. And already in the cinema, I was just like bouncing up and down in my chair, like geeking out. Because
what was funniest part was all of the sciencey guys immediately on the screen knew exactly what they were talking about. They just looked at him, that's a great name.
And I thought it was going to be like a really fleeting mention, like, what's Elrond? And I think Jeff Daniels says something like, it was a secret council. And I was like, yeah, damn right, it was a secret council. I love this shit. And then they keep going with it. And Lord of the Rings is mentioned. And what blew my mind even more was that Sean Bean is in the room. The guy who played Boromir, who was at the Council of Elrond, one of my favourite characters from Lord of the Rings, is in the room talking about Lord of the Rings stuff again. It was like Inception level deep, and it just blew my mind.
Do you know what? It shows that the film had so much attention to detail in it. I mean, there was something that I noticed, another thing coming from Donald Glover's character. When he wakes up, to start off with, when he's told, that he needs to start working and stuff like that, when he first comes up with the idea for the slingshot, he picks up a mug which says Troy and Arband in the morning. Now, Donald Glover was on a TV show called Community for six seasons, basically, and hopefully a movie in the future. And I laughed out loud, the friend next to me laughed out loud, because we both immediately knew that they cared about the different kind of shows and different films that these characters have been in, and they wanted to make it as funny as possible, just to have these little kind of details, little kind of Easter eggs in there for people to just kind of look at. I'm not sure whether there's any more. I'll have to have a look again.
Definitely. And I mean, I haven't seen Community, so I didn't pick up on that, but that's really cool that they go out of the way and do something like that. And like going back to the Lord of the Rings thing really quickly, like Jeff Daniels ends it by saying, if we're going with Lord of the Rings code names, make mine Glorfindel. And I was just like, I wanted to just throw my arms up in the air and go like, yes, Ridley Scott, or Drew Goddard, whoever wrote this line, you're amazing. So yeah.
Does that mean that they now owe money to Lord of the Rings and
I don't know, like
Peter Jackson?
Peter Jackson or the Tolkien estate or something like. I don't know, but I loved that moment. It was amazing, and to see Sean Bean in the room as well, it just hit my nerd levels in all the right places.
And
so
once again, just to mention, Sean Bean does not die.
Yes, totally. Like I was expecting them, like in the last act, to just say like, "Oh, Sean Bean, we need you to get into space and help the crew out and get to Mark Watney." And
I was going for the heart attack. I reckon end of the film, communications cut off. Has he made it? Has he made it? Oh, heart attack. Oh, dead.
Sean Bean, no. Yeah, it's that's like what 3 films now he doesn't die in. I don't think he dies in Troy. And this one, yeah, so that was amazing. So, do you have a favourite scene in particular? That was sort of like a moment for me.
Yeah.
I love the entire film, but that was just the moment that got the biggest reaction out of me because I am such a Lord of the Rings geek. But do you have a particular favourite scene at all?
Yeah, my favourite moments were the video diaries. Now, that means it's multiple moments. Because throughout the entire film, he is talking to this diary, keeping track of what's going on, and when he's talking to the camera, which is quite a lot of the film, to be honest, now I'm thinking back on it. It shows his humanity, it shows his humour off the best moments. It's basically him sometimes kind of talking smack about, like, his old team members and stuff like that. Talking about Earth and stuff like that, talking about how he's the greatest biologist botanist on Mars and stuff like that. And how he's a pirate, and all these just fun little moments.
Was it Mark Watney, the space pirate?
Yeah, they all come together just in the video diaries. And in the other parts of the film, you didn't really see that. The other parts of the film were the serious parts. These were the comedy parts, and I like those bits.
Yeah, and not just with that as well, but like you got the comedic parts where he finally can communicate with NASA. And he learns that they haven't told the rest of the crew that he's still alive. And he goes off on a massive swearing-filled rant, which is being broadcast live all around the world, which was hilarious. But then you also have the quieter moments, and they could have very easily gone with the trope of tell my wife and kid that I love them, but we never really get the impression that he's got a family in this film.
No,
they never really mention
it.
It's just the parents, isn't it? He just says, tell my parents that I died doing something that I love doing. And that does really hit those emotional sort of like checkpoints that you want in a film like this, and he keeps his hopes up all the way through. And I love when he realises his situation. You get that really grim scene as well at the start when he's been impaled by the antenna, and he like pulls it out and staples his stomach up. I'm like, thank you, Ridley Scott. You've now done stomach surgery correctly with a stapler. Yeah. And then he just gets to work, and you just follow him with these diaries of him experimenting with stuff, like when he's trying like he knows he can grow potatoes, but he needs water for it. He knows the formula to make water, but then he blows his face off almost when he doesn't count for the excess oxygen. And it's just brilliant to watch. And then you go through his highs when he can finally grow stuff and things are looking up.
And his lows when he blows up the spaceship again.
Yeah, and like the problems he faces where he needs heating in the things, so he digs up some, it's like a plutonium vault, isn't it?
Yeah.
He like just straps it to the back and he says, I'm being kept alive by like a decomposing radioactive bomb. Yeah, it was brilliant. And then like later on in the film where you think everything's going to be fine, and I mean, this was bigged up all the way through the film and like brought up. It was like the smoking gun of the film, really, when the entrance hatch decompresses and blows up. and
Yeah.
he has to vacate. No, he has to tape it up, doesn't he? He gets some like tarp and has to like crudely put it over. And that was one of my favourite scenes actually in the film. The tension in that scene was where the tarp itself was like billowing in the storm and the wind, and it's
he
like,
was just
oh
kind
God,
of
is
looking
it...
very nervous, and he
Yeah.
was thinking, "Shit, do I stay here? Do I not?" And
Yeah.
in the end, he just decided. In the end, it's not worth taking the risk. He's gonna go sit outside and stuff like that.
And it's those moments where, like, you look at it and you're thinking, like, and he mentions this at the start, like, one tear in that, and I'm dead. If this malfunctions, I'm dead. And it was just that moment, like, the sound design of, like, the wind and the plastic, it was like, that's not going to hold. And then later on in the film, they send him up to space with just, like, a piece of plastic over the front of the spaceship, because they need to lighten the load, don't they? But yeah, really now I'll get into my one problem of the film, which is to do with the ending. And again, I don't know if this is a problem with the film itself, if they could have added to it, or what it's like in the book. I did find the ending very abrupt. Jessica Chastain's character flies out on like the little space chair and like grabs a hold of him. And for some reason, maybe it's because I was watching Apollo 13 and I love that movie, I was expecting like a whole return journey to Earth, try to land safely, something goes wrong with the ship.
Just like Gravity.
Just like Gravity, but I mean, like Apollo 13 as well, if they had done that, that would have been exactly the same ending as that film, and I think that everyone would have been drawing comparisons to it anyway. So as such, he just like kind of grabs him, and all the way through I was thinking, this isn't over, something's going to happen in a minute. Like, it kept cutting back to that guy who planted the bomb as well, the chemist of the group.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, like, something's going to go wrong here. He's going to blow up, or it's going to take a chunk off the ship, and they're not going to be able to get back completely safely to Earth. And then it just sort of, like, cuts to black, and he's back on Earth, and he's teaching seminars, and all the other astronauts in training are, like, saying hi to him, and, like, you know, really want to get to know, like, how he survived on that planet. And then it just sort of, like, cuts to the credits, and I was thinking, I guess it makes sense, but the ending almost felt a bit like an anticlimax.
Yeah, there was something that I didn't like about the ending, which is the Iron Man moment.
Yeah.
And I thought, no, that's just stupid. You've come so far, done so well, making the film believable, and then he's just like, yeah, I'm gonna Iron Man it. I'm just gonna cut a hole in my suit and just fly.
Yeah.
And you're just thinking, at that point, I thought, okay, film's lost a bit of dignity there.
What is it with space films and just jumping the shark at the end?
I don't know. It isn't on 5-dimensional bookcase levels.
No.
But it's pretty bad.
Yeah,
they could have done better for the ending.
The film itself is based on a lot of real science, I would say. Yeah, there are some bits where you're thinking, oh, well, that's just like your Hollywood tropes just to get it in the film. But I will agree with that. For the most part, it was believable. And because he's using these video diaries and explaining it almost in layman's terms to the viewer, you're sort of on board with them all the way through it. And you can think that, oh, yeah, this could really be happening.
Yeah.
And yeah, when he like punches a hole in his suit at the end and he's like whizzing through space, it reminded me of the scene from Gravity where she gets the fire extinguisher and uses that to propel herself through.
Oh no, because that reminds me of the scene from WALL-E where he gets the fire extinguisher.
That's a good. That's a good point. But that's a Pixar film. I'll allow it in that. But yeah, there are bits like that where it does get a little far fetched, but it never really detracted from my enjoyment of the film. But I will agree with that the film had done so well up until that point, basing it in somewhat of a reality, that when it gets to that bit, it does sort of draw you out of it a little bit.
Actually, I have another problem with the ending. Which is something that I was talking about earlier in the spoiler-free section, trying not to move into it so much, but it was to do with the support characters.
Right.
At that point, they were all given jobs and roles. They were all given, okay, you guys are going to catch him, you're going to steer the ship, you're going to blow up the doors, and then in the end, Jessica Chastain did everything, I swear. It was like they had a chance to be, you're the explosive guy, you're the driver. I know that in the end, Michael Pena actually was the driver, but she's like, I'm going to go catch him, because I'm the only character with any depth other than him. And I thought, come on, give the other guys a bit more screen time. Give them a bit of a chance. I mean...
And I guess Kate Mara was just there for moral support. Like, she was running on a treadmill, and then she, like, kissed the chemist through the glass door, and then
she gave
can't
birth
what
to
she
the
does.
chemist's kid at the end.
Oh yeah, was that the chemist? Oh okay.
Yeah.
The credits were weird for me. Like, I hear what you were saying about the soundtrack and stuff. I didn't have a problem with it. It wasn't up until that moment that it felt a bit like a different movie.
Yeah.
With the soundtrack choice I always love these kind of credits, but it felt very sitcom-y. You know how it will freeze frame on a character and it'll come up with their name.
Everyone jumps up to the air with their knees tucked up, shouting, "Yeah!"
Yeah, it was like watching like Saved by the Bell or something, like the intro to that. That's what it felt very much like, very cheesy, very corny, and I thought that kind of not ruined the film, but that
was
just
the
wasn't in keeping
American
with the theme.
of the film shining through.
Yeah, oh yeah, and the moment where he lands back and it cuts to like a conference room with everyone like jumping up and down, cheering, hugging each other.
Yeah.
Complete Murica moment. But
and then
no,
we missed the parade. The parade. I'm pretty sure that'll be in the deleted scenes on the DVD.
Extended Gungan parade scene. Oh God, I hope not. But
you know it's there. You know it's there.
Oh, yeah, totally. But I'm trying to think now if there's any other spoilers and stuff.
My biggest, worst moment, though, single word, montage.
Which one?
Do I have to say which one specifically? If so, it'd be Waterloo.
Oh, the driving montage.
Yeah.
You gotta have a montage.
No.
Rocky had a montage.
Okay, that driving montage? Fine. Okay, he's driving through the desert. We need to cut off about 2 minutes from the film. We'll stick in a really cool song, stuff like that. No, stick in a beautiful score. Stick in a Star Wars score there.
You wanted like a Lawrence of Arabia grand epic
score, because at that point in the movie it's getting really serious. You're heading towards the serious end. He becomes less funny at that point because there's no interaction with any videos. He's thinking, okay, I've been laughing for the last however many years now. Now it's time to get serious. Now I've got to go home. That would have tied the film together beautifully. But no, we're left with Waterloo by ABBA. And that really angered me.
And there was me sitting there like, I don't have ABBA on my iPod, but I still vaguely like ABBA. But yeah, no, I can see that. But I've basically said everything I can for spoilers. As I said, there wasn't really much to talk about in spoilers. It's very much sort of a straight narrative plot all the way through. I've said everything on The Martian, I think, if you have.
No, I'm good with that.
Yes, so just to summarise, I would still very much recommend it. Definitely one of the best films of the year. Return to form for Ridley Scott. Go and see it if you like sci-fi, comedy, action, thriller. Brilliant performance as well from Matt Damon. I don't know if this movie will be up for any Oscars and stuff like that. I assume it might for visual effects.
Yeah.
But besides that, I don't think it will get a look in because, as I say, we're sort of hitting the stride now where Oscar movies are coming in. You typically get it with like October.
Yeah, I reckon it will be one of those films where if you type in best films of 2015 into Google, it'll be on there.
Oh,
definitely. It may not be the top lot, but if you scroll across a couple of pages, it'll be there somewhere.
And I think it definitely deserves to be up there. I think thinking back to it now of all the films I've seen this year, it definitely, as I said, top 5, if not top 3.
It ain't no Road Fury. Or Fury Road, or whatever
Fury
it's
Road, yeah. See, the thing is, I think that this was a better film than Fury Road, but I had a better theatrical experience with Fury Road.
I would say that Fury Road was less of the plot and more of the, oh my god, this is amazingness, and that's what's made it my favourite film of the year so far.
Immortan Joe, one of the coolest goddamn characters I've ever seen in a movie.
NASA rejected the mission.
So, if we do this?
We're talking mutiny. If anything goes wrong, we die.
Do you realize how crazy this is? We had no other option.
No matter what happens, tell the world, tell my family that I never stop fighting to make it home.
But yeah, so that was our review on The Martian. Be sure to rate, like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Get involved. Let us know what you thought of The Martian. Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? Is it one of your favourite movies of 2015? Let us know. So before we round off our show today, we're going to get into our section of recommended movie. How recommended movie works is that each week, at the end of our main show, we take it in turns, choosing a film to review for our midweek show film club that vaguely ties in with whatever we reviewed today. So today was obviously The Martian. And Tate, I thought I'd give you a chance to get in on this. So this week, kicking off with your recommended movie, which film have you picked and your reasons for picking it?
So, it was going to be Gattaca, because I was going to think, oh yeah, space film, it's my favourite film of all time, I can talk about it for ages, that's fine. But no, I'm going to give us a bit of a challenge, because it's going to be quite hard to find something I like about this film.
Okay.
Prometheus.
Ooh.
We've been hammering it all episode, and I thought, do you know what? Let's see if we can find something that we actually like about it.
Oh, you're making me rewatch Prometheus. Why would you do that? Oh, God. Okay, no, I've got some things to say on that.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of positives now, and I'm really struggling, but I think I'll find something. Cool. So, Thursday, yep, that will be our midweek show. Film club will be Prometheus. Oh, joy of joys. But until then, you can find us on Facebook. We're on facebook.com/cinemasavvy. We're on Twitter at twitter.com/cinema_savvy. And we're also on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/cinema_savvy as well. So get involved with the channel. The videos are going to be coming more often now. We're getting back into the swing of things. New co-hosts, new things going on with the channel, new schedule. So as we move into phase 2, we hope you stick around and get involved, because good things are coming, and we're hitting the Oscar season now where films are coming in thick and fast.
Oh,
so
boy.
Oh, my wallet is going to be hit hard by these movies. But yeah, so until next time, thank you very much for listening.